The moment is upon us. Kairos has arrived. Welcome everybody to A Path to the Unknown. Today here we will be continuing on with our previous ventures throughout the Dream-Quest to Kadath. Unknown Kadath in particular, and Roadwarden of course. The point we are at in such a venture is that of finally getting our way forward on the western side towards Howler's Dell, and in the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath, we are finally seeing Carter through after his escapades of almost getting shanghaied off to the far, far reaches of the moon, in particular the dark side of the moon, where the Sons of the Night had taken him. But here we are, then carrying on. Hello there, nobody. Good seeing you. Ahoy indeed. Here we go. Now, insofar as housekeeping before we carry on with our routine as we do, we are taking the next 2 weeks off for the regular scheduled break, and also the company that I'll be having over. So do keep that in mind. For October, the next following 2 weeks, 2 streams will be gone. But by the time that we get back on it, hopefully, I'll have some more details to present insofar as my works on the Panatrivium, specifically the Panatrivium Standard Model. I am presently in the deep, deep midst of revising the original introductory section and the final Cosmo Rhetoric section. So we are making good gains, but this year-long effort will soon pay off and be something that I can tell you all about in finer detail. That aside, I believe that about covers everything, and we will start today with, as per the title, a bit more Roadwarden. Let me get the volume set up, and we can get right into it. Turn down my headset so it's not drowning out everything else. And here we go. Now, as I said, we had just finished up with the Pelt of the North, and we'll be moving back towards Howler's Dell. Hopefully we can get some food to eat while we are here. Ah, and the scavenger is around here. I suppose I can stop and have some conversation with him right quick. Hey, Roadster. Need anything? Ah, right. Excuse me, that's the scavenger. Hey, Roadster. Need anything? I have the options of enjoying your stay. I came for my reward. I want to learn about the peninsula. Tell me more about your travels. Tell me more about yourself, and I'll take another look at the main hall. Aside from just leaving, of course, and I will interrogate him about his time here. Wow, that's quite some impressive writing. They seem to have included a contingency in the event that you just ask him right after the scavenger gets back here. That's very crafty. It ensures that there is a real sense of continuity and perpetuum in your play throughout the entire experience with this character. Well, I've just arrived. I can tell you more tomorrow, but I spend a few hours on something when I spend a few hours on something soft. But damn, the smell around me is quite something, isn't it? I'm going to the well soon. Good to hear. Let's interrogate him about the reward. I don't have your coin yet. I should have it tomorrow, when I sell all the iron we were carrying. All right, very good. How about the peninsula? You must understand. You're a roadster. People ask you for help. They don't think you steal from them when they're in bed. He pats his bag. It's not the same when you're a drifter. They don't ask me to stay, to marry their kids, or to help them with harvest. They just ask me if I plan to pay for the room or buy stuff. You talk for quite some time, though it's difficult to uncover the details hidden in his tale. He He claims he and his pack-bird came here by boat, about which he refuses to speak. He landed just next to Gale Rocks, good to know, a large fishing village near the northern shore. People there were irritable and unwilling to idly chat with him, but opened their mouths after he helped them at the smokehouse. On sunny days, the locals hunt on the shore, and when it gets dark, they hide behind the walls, gutting the fish. And when the weather goes to shit, they boil water for salt and put fish in it, then hop to the barrels. Though I don't know how, they don't have many trees around. Then they sell the meat to the villages and places. He clears his throat. For crops. I let him continue. I was told to stay away from the White Marshes, though no shell told me why. I joined a group of fish traders who were going to the old Pygos and its monastery. I hate the place. Bah! Everyone does. He shrugs. I traded there for a bit, but the villagers were cold. They spend the days praying and talking on and on about their duty, and they're grey like an ash worm. So I left once at dawn, me and my bird, and wasn't that a mistake? He was attacked by a short bear-like creature. He tried to run away, but following his bird was a bad idea. He fell over to run away. He tried to run away, but following his bird was a bad idea. He fell over in the thicket, so the monster had time to get him. I hit it with a bolt. Wasn't enough. I kicked it, so it bites my legs, tears my flesh away. I almost dozed off from the pain, but can you believe it? That lazy bird came back and charged at it with its beak. His dagger was enough to get through the surprised animal's belly. It ran away. How did you survive with such deep wounds? The bird was patient. Let me lean on it. My ballista scared griefs away, and we got to Howler's Dell. That's where I found the old elders. They agreed to heal me, but only for coin, and told me it's an exception. After a few questions, you're sure that by the elders he meant the local druids, held by the villagers in great esteem. They didn't want to talk with me a whole lot. Said I'm impotent. His tone is filled with mockery. You hear that? I spent time with Tice. At least she wasn't so boring. You ask him about her, and he's more than happy to answer. She's a mare, so to speak. Once you get there, she'll make sure to see you. You'll know it's her. She's short, and her blonde hair is straight and long. She wears dresses and rouges her cheeks like a merchant. He points at the scar on his own face, which doesn't help your imagination. She's not scary. Not scary at all. At least as long as you don't ask about her wealth. I'll let her joke her too, drink some mead, or play dice. Her laugh is something else. So why did you leave Howler's Dell alone? It wasn't smart to move to the ruins all by yourself. Ah, it's my trade. I shouldn't tell, and I won't. You already know all that you need to. Okay. I think I've already asked him about himself, but we'll see. Aha. I could tell you stories for days, but who cares? He chuckles. I'm just doing my thing, moving from wall to wall, sleeping where they let me, buying what I need, selling what I can, saving dragons for later on. I used to be a sailor. Some people called me Pyros because of the, forehead. But I'm not one to push a plow or patch ship sails all day long. I don't care if a corpse eats my bones one day, as long as I can stay free for a couple of years more. And I'm damn good at staying safe. Or rather, I was before I landed in this shithole. He touches his scarred face and smirks unpleasantly. I haven't gotten one of these in years, but I didn't take 2 weeks on the road here and I almost lost my legs. Spent all my coin in Howler's Dell for Elder's magic. He brushes some invisible dust off his pants. Not the first time I have an empty pouch, not gonna lie, but there's no coin waiting here. Once I push all the iron to the locals, I'm moving south. Though I won't ride alone, and I'm not making that mistake again. But I wouldn't. Good to know that his name is, or one of his names anyway, is Pyros, though. Might come in handy. I've heard no ships can land on this coast, or he's probably lying, but I don't let him know that I've noticed it. I have another question. Interesting. It is quite the tale, I will admit. But I do want to know, if he isn't just spinning a yarn, where can ships come in? Well, he tilts his head to the right and gives you a distrustful look. If you're patient and take your time, you can get to Gale Rocks from the sea. In a light boat or a raft or something that can avoid the rocky teeth. Sure, no hope for a ship or any trade, but with some help, you can do it. But don't tell anyone I told you this. His tone gets significantly colder. It's not something people should talk about. I nod. I have some questions. I'm glad I pressed on. Very glad. Aye, we can talk. Go ahead. And I'll see. Oh, and it did update his name properly. That's a continued tidbit that I have noticed from all of the interactions I've had with folks, and I must say, it wears well. What do we have here? Aha. Ah! Blessed be all of the gods of the world here in Havlavan and all. Oh, very good. I have some food in my belly, and now I can go on and about. Let us see if we can get past that rancid, horrid place out west. You enter the wetlands with their many streams, ponds, and fish. Large birds run and fly between the gray, sparse trees that are covered with moss, mushrooms, and critters. For a human, it may be an unwelcoming and harsh realm, but the overwhelming swarms of insects prove that it's a realm full of life. The danger, with teeth and claws, is hidden below the water's surface. While I will surely stray from those banks. This plant shouldn't be alive. Not without leaves. It doesn't resemble the other trees of the wetlands. It's something else. You get off your horse and prepare your axe. The water is filled with dirt and dead plants, and it smells like an old corpse. The roots are spreading far, breaking through the water's surface. You don't see any saurians in the grasses or on the shore. You approach the table-like altar made of 3 limestone slabs. Were these rocks originally as formless as they are now? Or was there a point in time centuries ago when they were precisely shaped and decorated by masters of artistry? There's no way to tell. Egg is peacefully observing the dark grass and slapping flies with its tail. Whatever it is that you feel in the air, it's clear that your companion sees this place through very different eyes. I smile and scratch the bottom of its neck. Go ahead. I'll look around for just a moment. You don't see any creatures nor humans. I can look at the altar or the water. Well, I think that taking a look in the water will probably be less dangerous. Let's try that first. You step cautiously without knowing how deep it gets. You have to consider that a saurian could be camouflaged in the mud, waiting for a victim to get near. Since you don't plan to kneel down and drink, you're hoping to dodge a potential strike. Once you get closer, you start breathing again. While the water is dirty, it's also shallow. You see the vegetation, swimming insects, and even small fish. All of them stay away from the tree roots, which look like a spider web covering the bottom of the pond. Aside from that, you don't see anything that would catch your attention. Well, goes nothing. Take a look at those roots. You kneel in front of one that's lying on the shore. It's brown, covered with hair that resembles that on your arm. When you touch it, it's moist, soft, and warmer than you expected. That's gonna be a flesh tree. This reminds me of the Golthias variety of Forgotten Realms lore. Hmm. Well, I might as well drop a quick save and see what we can do about it. Do something with it. Well, as a scholar, I guess I have a few options. What do you try and do? We have just encountered a tree that has various physic qualities that resemble that of a living bit of flesh, at least, if not something more significant. And now here we are presented with the opportunity, an open-ended query of what our options are in a game that is largely based upon branching pathways in text or dialogue choices. This is quite a good divergence from the aforementioned, and it admits of far more potentials for the imagination of the player. Being able to break off your more bounded or perhaps even, you could say, railroaded options with something a little bit more sandbox can genuinely offer quite a refreshing and exploratory pathway for anyone who is engaged in a more particular activity. Something where one's decisions are far more critical, especially in the moment. All right. So, taking a look, I think I'll try to examine. Either you can't do that or I don't understand you. Interesting. This line here in and of itself denotes that there is something of an entity that is actively taking our commands and decisions into account, whether it be something akin to a game master or something more significant inside of the lore. Well, let's try something else. Let's see in our inventory. What's it called there? It's the alchemy kit, is it not? Yes. I test my alchemical ingredients. Well, so much for that. Um, hmm. I pick it up? Alright. Well, this is quite narrowing it down. Hmm. Well, I guess given our options here of kicking it, I would have anticipated a little bit more. Hmm. Well, let's try rephrasing it. I lift the root. Alright. Well, I think that option's not happening. I'll try talking to it. I talk to it. Oh no. Okay. Well, kick is what they offered. The root is flexible and stretchy. Your blunt hit sinks into it like it's a pillow. Whenever you lean away, it returns to its original shape. But can I try cutting it? You pull out your knife, then stop in place. You can't tell what the results of wounding the tree would be. I'll come back to that later. This seems like it's probably some kind of sacred tree. I'll see what the altar has for us here. There's clumped dirt and the uneven nicks fused by years of winds and rains. The bottom surface of the table is dusty, but you don't find any spiderwebs or mold, even though it's a perfect spot for them. The tree root clings. The tree roots cling to the altar in many spots. They're firmly attached. You struggle to move them even by an inch. The cream-colored limestone is cold and smooth. I'll try to make an offering. What do I have in my inventory? So, I have egg in my inventory. One whole horse in my bag at all times. Good to know. Hmm. Well, all of these are quite valuable to me. I guess I could try with food. Maybe come back later once I have some more stuff to actually give. You place any type of food you can find in your sacks or on the nearby plants, but none of them seem to make any difference. Glad it didn't take those. Hmm. I'll try blood. Ah, how much? Hmm. Try a couple of drops, rather than a slight cut or a deep cut. You jab a finger with your knife. The blood flows slowly, and you pay close attention to the moment when it falls on the altar's surface. Each drop splashes in all directions, then disappears. You see no trace of them. Well, I'd really rather not ruin myself here. Hmm. I'll save. And if it's an insane outcome, then I'll load. I think that's fair. I'll make a deep cut. Your blood spills on the altar and sinks into it before it gets to the edge. The tree greets your offering with the sound of moving, stretching branches. You try to ignore the pain and prepare water and bandages to take care of the wound. Huh. Right? Well, that didn't do anything, and I am at 0 vitality. I think I'll quick load. I'll come back to this at a later date, whenever we can afford some more sacrifice. But for now, blood tree, go away. Come again another day. I guess I can't try the roots again, huh? Alright. Well, I was gonna try and cut those if I couldn't do anything else. Huh. Well, even so, I should be able to see what I can do about my fish trap. Also see if I can wash myself. Dag nabbit, I guess not. Okay, well, fish trap? Ah, the fish is not trapped. Well, we have north and south. What do you guys think? I could roll for it, or I could follow you guys' suggestion. I'm really not particularly sold on either one, so I know there's a little bit of delay, of course, in the chat, so I'll see. I'll wait a few seconds to see if you guys have any suggestions. But I got a nice D4 here, if not, and we'll make our way, one bout or another. Howdy, run man. Nice to see ya. My screen is a bit small. I'm glad that I saw the ins correctly, rather than it being an im. Heidi ho. Howdy ho. South we go. Thank you, nobody. Alright. Seems we've come to a bit of an impasse. The shapes of mountains are cutting through the horizon. The water gets gradually less muddy. The cleaner it gets, the more animals you see. The family of deer blocks the road, resting and enjoying the cold water, which would be deadly for a human stomach. You consider riding around them through the sparse meadow, but your presence also causes them disquiet. Without much haste, they regroup and run east into the leafy forest. What a lovely scene. This still is the introductory area to the entire setting itself, but as opposed to so many other stories, Roadwarden is maintaining its commitment, much as to the dialect as pointed out in the Shell and Numa, of portraying the environment properly, not allowing the pretense to drop away. I travel forward. Let's see where this takes us. Well, it was nice seeing you run, anyway. You have a good one out there. You've reached Hag Hills, the wall of stones that has blocked the city's grasp. The one well-established route through them leads through the valley where you found Tullia's camp. There are no maps of the highlands nor local tribes, only stories. The beaten path leads you by the garden beds of herbs and vegetables to an old yet not abandoned mine hidden behind a massive door made of steel. Well, of all the places to be well defended, a mountain is a good option. I look around. There's no hitching rail for a mount. They evidently don't intend to have many guests. And it's such a lovely place, I don't know if I can blame them. A bearded, skinny elder sits on a bench, observing you like a sculpture, with his legs crossed and his fingers interlocked on his abdomen. I think it's time for another save. Let's see about that. We'll save over the old one. Why not? I think 3 save slots is enough. Well, I think, given he's an elder, he probably wants to be respected. Good day to you. Don't worry about my horse, I'll keep it away from your garden. I shall try. Only worms too stupid to understand me would eat what's mine. You dismount and mention that your palfrey is no worm, but the man reprimands you with a thick accent. Let me see you whilst you speak. I can hear you without magic, but I'll read your lips. He doesn't yell, but his voice reminds you of a combat instructor from the city. His face is wrinkled, but he sits straight, with beard and hair still carrying glimpses of fair blonde. He's tan like a worker, and his eyes are blue and piercing, as if they belonged to an infant. I'll adopt my previous reading for the update that it's quite the thick accent. You're near from here, and I will near welcome a stranger in this refuge. Say what you're looking for and be gone. Wow, some knowledge would be of great use. I've read about people like him in Wright's tablets. Ooh. You ponder about his unusual vigor and the unregarded garden. He may be a spiritual leader of a pagan community, most likely a spellcaster. Druids try to protect others from nature's wrath by teaching them to respect the laws of balance and restraint. Different tribes develop their own traditions, but you know that in this province, such priests prefer to be addressed as forest speakers. Good to know. I explain who I am. I will call him Forest Speaker. He lowers his head and closes his eyes, taking slow, deep breaths, forcing you to wait in silence. The elder is tall, with long hair and a beard that was let loose a long time ago. His sandals are covered in dust, and you spot dirt on his clothes and skin. The woolen tunic and linen were made with care, decorated with colorful threads at the collar and sleeves. Now all the blues and greens have faded, and the fabric is held together by patches and stitches. He unfolds his hands and puts them on his lap, palms up. You know our customs, at least some of them. Those who know how to bound to the trees will never suffer from wild creatures. I wait for him to look at me, or I do my best not to smirk. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's good that we have the... I praise this more jovially and mirthfully at other points, but the fact that the commitment remains, but the fact that we continue to witness throughout our options that there is a dismissive path we can assert ourselves through. While it's not the kind of character that I'm developing and building here as someone who is completely new to the entirety of Roadwarden and its setting, it would be very interesting if you're trying to inhabit a character that is not on the, well, perhaps traditional scale of good, or at least on the more lawful end of things in respect and keeping with the standing traditions and customs of the area. I think I'll wait for him to look at me. And the music picks up excellently. The man stands up and approaches your palfrey. Without touching it, he observes its eyes, mane, stomach, and rear. Egg ignores this examination. "And those was right, then. Asterion is dead, as are his plans. Such is the fate of all dreamers." He turns towards you with a grim look. "Are you going to look for him?" You nod. "Why? If he's vanished into the fogs, there's no point in putting yourself in danger. What do you expect to find?" That. I'm really glad that you suggested southbound, nobody. That has put my search way ahead of any kind of northbound journey, I think. My options are, it's a job. There's a reward for finding him. He may need my help. I need to know what kind of danger he encountered. If he's dead, I want people to know about it. If someone tried to make him disappear, they deserve to face justice. Or there's no reason why you need to know that. Again, allowing us the branching pathways of, well, I think what very clearly finds the neutral, good, you could argue, lawful, and chaotic options. As for my character here, I think, especially to try and persuade our forest speaker that he simply might need my help, or that I need to know what kind of danger he encountered. Probably sounds a little bit more whistly to this fellow. He's observing you carefully. Do you plan to get rid of this danger, or maybe learn from Asterion's mistakes? Or are you still thinking about leaving this land for good? He starts to chuckle. Only the right questions will bring you the answers. With lively steps, he heads towards the spring. He washes his hands, once again forcing you to wait. Howdy, Geo-Dragon. Hi from Alaska, you say, and howdy, howdy, howdy from here in the middle south of the states the same. Glad to hear all the way from the cold north. Storied as it is, much as this place here. So, I think that between the options of old people need time to gather their thoughts, and he tries to dictate the pace of the conversation and put me in my place, I'll take a more pleasant and amicable choice towards that. His voice is warm. I'm glad that we've seemed to impress our fellow forest speaker. So, how can I help you? Have you met Asterion? What can you tell me about this place? How can you survive in this place, being all by yourself? What can you tell me about the peninsula? I've heard about some bandits. Are they bothering you? Can you tell me anything about the altar near the crossroads in the north? I dabble a bit in herbalism. Any chance you'd sell me some of the wound wort you grow here? I want to know what happened to the village in the east. What can you tell me about the druids? It seems like the path at the heart of the woods is quite dangerous. I'm looking for a job. Can I enter the cavern? I need a place to rest. Well, Of all the places to find myself in good company, it seems like this is quite the one. Oh, it's not late enough in the day to properly rest. I don't know what it says. Ah, no highlight there. Well, I definitely need to know about Asterion, that's for sure. He wanders among the garden beds, from time to time touching the leaves at hand. He was here more than once. He was no one to stand aside and let events play out by themselves. The villagers from the north are sometimes in need of my assistance, and Asterion was serving them as a messenger. He bends down and tears away a small, flowerless plant. He wanted to settle down among these roads, maybe to live freely. He had great plans and wanted to make this realm flourish. To rebuild the ruins, get rid of the brigands, and clear the trade route. I told him that the forest needs no more people, and that this realm is too wild to feed and clothe everyone. His greed and dreams have eaten him, and now he is no more. He pauses, and you can hear his heavy breathing, as if he's getting tired. He straightens up, and that's that, traveler. If you want to look for his shell, travel north, far north. People there should know where he is. And in addition to finding out that he is in fact dead, also where to look. I'll do that. Man, am I glad that I came south. And what can you tell me about this place? Your eye sees what there is to know. People found copper in a cave. It's been abandoned for a long time now, so we turned it into a shelter to stay close to the sacred tree and its altar. We're servants, my wife and I, and this place is nothing more than a servant's house. How can you survive in this place all by yourself? His raised voice makes him sound like a preacher. One day, me and my wife will be put defenseless old people. But we've studied Numa and leaves for many decades. I heal wounds and illnesses of humans and animals alike, and the beasts listen to our whispers. The holy seed lets our shells wait for death in strength. And what can you tell me about the peninsula? Can? I've lived here for almost a century, traveled both by the pass and through the wilderness. His voice becomes stronger and makes you think of a bard. But I will never be your guide or a teacher, and if there's anything I can wish for, 'tis that you will stay away from the woods. The creatures get angrier the more we take from them. They do not listen to our warnings, and one day they'll bury us under a storm of claws and fangs. There will be no soul to spare a tear after us. His eyes are as harsh as a hawk's, making him look like a priest who hears a child asking for honey on a day of ceremonial fasting. Do not poke the hornet's nest. Do not ride east, and never use the path that runs through the heart of this land. That road was meant to save time, but brings only death. Be a servant, an overseer. Do not try to bend this place to your will. He points at you and wags his finger after every word. Your will, anyone's will, is the key to danger and his salvation. I thank him. These instructions are in line with my own thoughts. I'm not going to be anyone's puppet, and I need to take some risk to achieve my goals. Now the question here is, does this lock us into a pass, sort of line down through the story? Or will it be something a little bit more forgiving? Well, I've already rolled for it, and my character is a non-believer, but there is probably wisdom in this fellow's words. Hmm. Though the last seems like a more neutral option. Let's see here. I think I'll take some options here. Some risks are necessary. He's observing your lips. Do you need anything else? Well, let's see about those bandits. He strokes his beard, but then grasps it nervously. There are souls who steal from White Marshes, a village in the north. They wouldn't dare to show up here, but those brigands are brutes, simpletons. Even their leader, Glaucia, listens only to force and will humiliate for the enjoyment of her band. She will never be afraid of some lost Roadwarden. He lets go of his beard and lowers his head. She's drifted so far away from her old self. A kind, bright girl from Gale Rocks, loved by her parents. But now, do not cross her, or she'll find you. That clears up a lot of questions I've had about her. Can you tell me about the altar, then? He smiles. 'Tis the tree that you should pay attention to, the true gift from the forest. It answers to our offerings and rewards us with magnificent fruits. They'll heal both shell and soul and make anyone who eats them stronger than they ever were. We gather around this altar whenever the winter ends, and whilst it requires a painful sacrifice from all of us, it prepares one's soul for the future like nothing else could. Hmm. That explains why there was the seeming movement of the tree from the bit that I could give it. I wonder if I could come back later and harvest it. Huh. I'm glad I didn't cut it, that's for sure. It would have earned me some terrible ire, and definitely put me in quite a situation. Hmm. It also speaks to the mindset of Asterion previously, being that he didn't cut it down and presumably was on good terms with all the four speakers. I might imagine that then he perhaps also made some sacrifices of his own. Wow, I definitely need some woundwort. He looks at you with a renewed curiosity, then rests at the wooden bench, from where he glances at the pink flowers. His beard shakes as he tilts his head forward. Wishing to help the wounded, I see. A notable goal. Once his eyes turn towards your lips, you see a doubting raised brow. 'Tis a good season to pick their flowers and leaves, but you'd leave me with nothing but the bare stalks and the black tubers in the soil. And I quite like these tubers. You wish to take the oils away. Take care of the rest. Shouldn't be more than an hour's time. Very well. Can do. Grab yourself a cloth from the bucket. Keeps your knees from the dirt. His tone has not a hint of light-hearted invitation. It's an order of a master addressing their pupil, a statement as undisputed as the color of the sky. You put your belongings away and grab both the cloth and a small spade that's placed next to it. As you prepare egg to graze in peace, you noticed a horned bear among the nearby trees, just down the path. Horned bear. Well, I guess we've already encountered griffins. Not such a stretch then. It completely ignores your presence, and as you're reaching for the axe, you hear a calm voice of the elder. Let the beast drink in peace. They seek no harm. After a minute or so, you place the cloth on the ground and kneel on it. You start by cutting away the oily parts of the plants with your dagger and placing them on a wax-soaked linen cloth, hoping that they'll stay somewhat fresher before the season ends. You stop caring about the way they color your fingers with green and pink. You don't have to be gentle either. After all, you plan to remove the wound warts in their entirety. The man interrupts you before you start digging. I do not respect There's many herbs growing in the city. You look at him and wipe your forehead with a sleeve. Once you learn how to read, you can find a lot in the herbaria. The monastery has a great garden with all sorts of valuable plants, and the caretakers willing to share their knowledge. My neighbors used to be farmers before they lost their home in the war. They helped me a lot. But people do have gardens in the cities. On the roofs, outside of the walls, and in small beds. I shrug. I wasn't born in Havlavan. Much as with the rest of the self-related options of dialogue, even out here, several locations out from the starting area, we are yet being able to further explore and expand our character's backstory and further assert our footing for not only how this particular area will approach us, but the entirety of the folks throughout the peninsula. It's something that ought to be observed and considered as in the experience of many games, both tabletop and fixed path. Oftentimes, the immediate circumstance often gets lost in the midst of whatever is being expressed or explained at the time. Continuing to reinforce the exploration of the character shows that not only is there more to explore, expound, but also that the world itself is not so superficial that it can be expressed in a small handful of exchanges. I think that I will elect to have not been born in Havlavan. He nods. I figured as much. You stab the soil with a spade, getting to all the black rhizomes and roots you can find. The man tells you to leave the garden bed as it is so he can add some animal dung to it. You've gathered a small pile of yellowish worm-like tubers, still covered in dirt, not much longer than a finger and disturbingly twisted. You gesture at the results of your work, but the man frowns and looks towards the pond. You forgot to wash them, herbalist. I'll take the time to wash them. You have a strong back. Just wash them before you eat. Fine. I begrudgingly carry the tubers to the bank. I think that I will happily wash the tubers for him. You get closer to the tiny waterfall. You stand across from it and let the cool water do your job for you. In the meantime, washing your hands. The refreshing touch tempts you to take a sip as well. Finally, you put the tubers on the bench, and the old man, without a comment, grabs one of them and puts it in his mouth, chewing with a hint of a smile. Your mount just woke up from its short nap. How charming. Well, that is a nice thing to have. I guarantee that'll save me some time in the near future. I assume it's been folded into my alchemic ingredients. I noticed it in the corner, but I didn't take a quick read of it. I think I want to know what happened to the village in the east. And I'm now willing to tell you about that. He raises his chin, and his beard shakes. That shameful tale ought to be kept in the past, for the sake of the living. Fair enough. Well, how about the druids? He strokes his beard gently. I will ne'er share our paths with strangers. We are the people of Howler's Dell, and the lands around it. All right, trust to be built. And, well, about the path at the heart of the woods? Seems quite dangerous. It has a long and dark past, and already caught many souls of its builders. 'Tis paved with blood, and last 10 years have revealed it was all for nothing. Since the days of... He glances at you, once again surprising you with how shiny and lively the blueness of his eyes is. Of grand discord. The tribes of this land are locking themselves in their fields and houses, too afraid to leave them behind, too untrusting to meet other souls unguarded. 'Tis near the first road to be claimed back by the wilderness, and will ne'er be the last. You ask if he has any tips for how you... you ask if he has any tips for you on how to survive such a trip, and he tells you it would be wiser to just avoid it. He then reaches to his pocket, grabs a leaf, and puts it in his mouth, chewing gently. Death may take many paths to a stranger, but cats are the only enemy that's both as dangerous in its stealth as in its combat. No human can fight it alone. If you see one of them and it's near too late, do not provoke it. Make it wary but not scared. Look big, talk a lot. Seek its action in its eyes. Also good advice for real life cat or other large feline attacks, at least for many of them anyway. Okay, well, now that I've interrogated him about everything else, let's hear about what jobs he might have to offer. I believe your goodwill, and I'm in need of your help. He gestures for you to follow him to the pond. 'Tis nae dangerous task, but one that I can complete by myself. And my spells are near enough to ask animals to fetch for me. He speaks very slowly. At the northern coast, you'll find Gale Rocks, a village of fishers. One of them is in my debt, and I want you to collect what's mine. You want to ask him about the debt. You want to ask him about this debt, but he doesn't look at you. He points at a shiny large fish with orange and golden scales that's swimming just nearby. This gorgeous creature is an empress carp, one of the few animals that thrive both in the seas and the lakes. I wait for him to look at me. You don't know where the man found the large worm that he now drops in the water feeding his pet. Go to that place and find Photios. He's a young father, an ocean folk with scars on his neck, which he will nae hide. Ask for a male empress carp, but beware, I need it alive, so it can mate with the one I have. He stands up and approaches you. I do not sleep on dragon bones, but the pneuma's in my blood. I'll use some of it to heal your wounds, though nae more than once. That's fair. Oof. I agree, or traveling with a live fish isn't going to be easy. I can't promise I'll do it right away. Yeah, it's probably the right choice. Do not worry. As long as it arrives here before fall, and alive, it is going to be a huge help for us. Well, can I enter the cavern then? Why would I allow a stranger to do such a thing? Again, fair. Well, that's been a fine exploration of the entire area, and I think I made a friend, at least an acquaintance, and getting that fish will let me properly earn some significant aid in the future, methinks. You slow down. Among the shrubs, a small pack of dragonlings is feasting on the carcass of a gray auroch. One of them, with red feathers on its arms, straightens up and gives you a curious glance. Head tilts left and right, forward and back. It screeches at you, but it doesn't move forward and returns to its meal. You wonder what would happen if you were on foot. Would they let you be, satisfied with their prey, or would they run after you? But if so, for what reason? For now, you have enough space to move forward, yet stay safe. The powerful jaws break the monster's bones loudly, then bite off and swallow chunks of the meat. I ride forward, but I keep my distance and look over my shoulder. I do wonder, I really do. Is it even possible for Egg to be, dispatched? I really hope not, but I can imagine that maneuvering throughout the land would be very difficult without. But given the fact that Egg is an inventory item, that speaks to the possibility. Hope I never have to face that option. The beaten road serves your palfrey well. The forest to your left becomes sparse and brighter, and there are dozens of human-made paths among the fruit-bearing trees. On your right there's a large pasture, with at least a dozen massive mouflons. 2 of them, already sheared, look comically small. Soon after that, you ride alongside vast flourishing fields filled with rye, still green, preparing itself patiently for the second harvest. The path ends with a massive wooden gate, and the stone wall separating you from the glow of lights behind it isn't as tall as the roofs, but you can't imagine climbing to its top. There are pretty much no cracks, no missing bricks, a sign of many hours of labor, especially considering how massive the settlement is, as wide as a city district. The birds and monkeys are now just a distant echo, replaced with the sounds of carts, running, hammers, saws, laughter, and shouts. Finally, maybe I can rest here. I don't feel comfortable in large settlements. Let's get this over with. I'll approach it jauntily. Bit of sanguine attitude towards it can't hurt. A young man is leaning against the closed gate, covered by its shadow. He's young, tanned, and has a short, elegantly trimmed red beard. Beneath the red gambeson, he wears an expensive tunic decorated with colorful trim. From his arms hangs a steel helmet, though the metal is so thin that it's mostly made of wool and leather. He moves into the light and takes on the posture of a disciplined soldier, not a mercenary. He's standing upright with his chin up. There are 2 weapons on the ground, leaning on the wooden beam of the gate, an axe made of steel and a wooden club. He doesn't reach for either. You dismount smoothly, still having some vigor left. Egg holds its tail high. A narrow path leads north, toward 2 field workers, one with a hoe and one with a pitchfork. They give way to you. You can't see their faces, but their clothes are simple, gray pants and vests, made from hempen wool. I wave back. Why not? It's better to keep some distance. I just approached the guard. Well, again, sanguinity is perhaps a worthwhile expense here. They talk for a bit, looking toward you and pointing at your mount, then walk away, disappearing behind the wall's corner. The guard smiles yet avoids your eyes, and has to clear his throat before he speaks. Welcome, traveler. Ah, another one with the accent. I'm just gonna assume that they all have the approximate accent. Welcome, traveler. If you're nae here to make trouble, Heldersdale welcomes you. We have the whitest flower there is. When he bows, you realize it's a well-practiced performance. If it's new garments you're looking for, you can order everything you need right here, in all colors, shapes, and sizes. Capes, boots, vests, robes. Or if you're looking yourself a master of the needle, I can assure you we have the fabric you're looking for. His act is over and he glances at your mount in a moment of silence. His eyes get wider as he observes it, with a childlike fascination. This is Egg. It helps me patrol the roads. You can pet its side if you want, but no sudden movements. I'm Kairos, your new Roadwarden. I want to see your mare. I think I'll entertain the lad, why not? He follows your instructions. Even though your palfrey pays no attention to the man's careful touch, the guard grins widely. Glad to have that impression. And now, your mayor. Oh, city folk, aye. The mayor is busy, but I'll ask her. Give us a moment to let you in. He knocks at the gate, which is then pulled inward by two other guards, a man and a woman, wearing their own gambesons, similarly green, but tailor-made to match their figures. The nearby buildings are simple houses made of wooden beams and covered with thatch, while the storehouse is even more modest, with a roof made of planks. The watchtower has a ladder made of ropes and sticks, no stairs. Just give me a moment. The guard strides away before he finishes the last word. The others close the gate behind you and observe your mount carefully. Your eyes run east to a humming creek running through the center of the village. This whole segment here of having a genuine interaction not only with the gate guard, but also the individuals that are within, the citizenry, and all of the edifices that they have established as part of that entryway. I find it quite an admirable opportunity, not only, well, I find it an admirable ingress, not only to the settlement itself, but also the sort of culture that it fosters and cultivates. Wow, let's see about that messenger. Calming sound, aye? That's Howler's Creek. The guard, like most of the locals, is taller than you. Wide, but shallow. There's ne'er been a flood in years. Pa told me there used to be nae bridges. Neighbors crossed it with their boots in their hands. And 'tis clean like a raindrop, but there are nae many fish. We're the brightest, well, we're the cleanest village in the north. Her companion chuckles brightly. When the guard returns, he's still alone. She can nae come now. A friend of mine is in labor, aye. The mayor wants to be there when the child arrives, but I was asked to show you the village. Okay. I nod. Fine. He approaches the watchtower. Tie your mount here. We'll keep the kids away. Most of the neighbors are getting ready to celebrate. Once you're done, he grabs the rope ladder. The view from up there is gorgeous. Well, I have the options of climbing after him or nodding and thinking my knife. If it's a trap, I'll get him first. I don't think this is a trap. I'll climb after him. Even though the ladder swings in all directions, the guard gets to the top quickly, like a monkey climbing up creepers. You, on the other hand, need to stop and wait for the ladder to calm itself. When you join the man on the wooden platform, you're a bit dizzy. He's leaning on the wooden parapet, observing the area with a smile. I happily look around. And glad that I did. See? There's nae place like Howler's Dell. The guard points in every direction, giving you no time to contemplate. For the next few minutes, he describes the fields and their crops, the flocks in the pastures, and the shepherds inspecting the fences. The ancient garden of trees and bushes, larger than the village itself, with sunlight dancing on the stream to its own tune. If you are to believe everything he describes, this place has access to everything in abundance. The sweetest honey, the most fragrant bread, the softest wool. In the beer? 'Tis excellent. He sounds like a city merchant who's trying to sell an old house. Of all of the ways of expediting, since we do have already established the necessity of properly exploring things and places in order to have them highlighted in our view of the world, the map here in specific. Simply allowing the character to climb to a peak in particular the watchtower, is a fascinating... is an excellent way of making that happen. Putting one not only in further communication and contact with the environs themselves, but also the characters that are directly linked to it, in this case, the city and gate guard. With the options of being, what an annoying kid. Near Havlavan, you could find 5 larger and richer settlements in less than 2 days. No wonder he's so proud. Why wouldn't he be? They've tamed this scrap of land and live in comfort. Wow. Considering they've not only asserted themselves on a stream, if not a proper river, judging by the depiction here, but also they have set forth a genuine, sturdy city wall, fully encircling the entirety of it, and have proper cultivations in fields all around, unlike the previous ruined village. I would say that this is not only a place that is worth admiring from their perspective, but also from the world-building perspective. On top of letting us get a full look of the place from the tower, we also have here the verisimilitude of a location that has made its mark in a good way and kept its place in the midst of this untamed peninsula on a river, on a place where there is fresh water and the opportunity to irrigate. I think that there is a lot to be said for the careful consideration put into where exactly they plopped down a big village, and furthermore, how they built out their map to enable that reflection. So I'll tell him so. The islet in the middle connects both parts of the village. According to the man, the northern gate is hardly ever opened, as it leads to nowhere now. Near the eastern gate, there's the Ape Ale Inn, where you can find a bed and victuals, and there's the stall where Akaikos regards our work, unless we annoy him with pointless talk. He lets out a chuckle. On the opposite side of the creek, there's another white house. It belongs to Bion, the best clothier in the north. The priests live in the... The priests live in the southeast, near the wall. They do not talk to strangers. You also hear about the hunter, the cooper, the fisher, the miller. The pie maker lives with his sister, the baker. The smith and her husband, the carpenter, live with their kids. Some of the larger buildings could accommodate 2, maybe even 3 generations at once. There could be more than 100 dwellers here. He considers stopping his speech, but he suddenly points at the islet again. There, see? The mayor's coming. The one wearing purple. You're free to join our traveler. And I will. I nod and climb down. Hopefully, not too hard of a drop then. You try to get down quickly, but 2 steps are enough to make you sure that it's a bad idea. You wait for the ladder to find its balance. You're relieved when you touch the ground again. You untie your palfrey and follow the guard. You pass a small pasturage, surrounded by a wooden fence, a few loose chickens, and a tethered boar. The fancier buildings are covered with whitewash coating, and surrounded with vegetables, herbs, and flowers. The bridges are wide enough to carry even a wagon, but for egg walking on the wooden beams is far from pleasant. The islet is empty, but you notice an empty stall painted with the shapes of colorful flowers. I walk over the second bridge. Along the entire path, you notice more and more people observing you, smiling or casually greeting you as they're focused on their own tasks. Finally, you reach the main square. A large tree grows in the center, surrounded by dark water, held together by a thin wall, perfect for sitting. but the smell coming from the liquid makes you think of rotten eggs. The plant reminds you of the tree you saw in the south, next to the swamp altar. In the north, you see the Ape Ale Inn. Judging by the stables, stools and benches outside of it, it's open for guests. The villagers are the villagers are chatting and dining loudly, and you catch their curious glances. On the side of the dining area, the merchant is arguing with a tall, broad-shouldered worker. An old man is sitting by himself, eating a pie, with a walking stick leaning against the table. A young woman is cleaning the empty mugs in the creek, speaking with a man at least twice her age, maybe her father. I need to spot to tether egg for sure. But in the interim, to carry on with what I was saying about the proper placement of this settlement on a waterway with plenty of opportunity to irrigate and farm, being a large open plain, having a populace, approximately 100 or so, actually carrying on and doing their routine, living the sort of idyllic life that you would anticipate from a place far, far in a, well, idyllic in its own right land. Somewhere fallow and untainted by the woes of this setting's Hovlavon, one of the greater capitals of humankind, evidently, allows it to breathe life into what is ultimately a static image. Sure, it might present itself quite well. It might stand as a monument of good world building in something so relatively simple and straightforward as Roadwarden. But it imbues the imagery presented and all of the dialogues that are had previous and afterward with a sense of animation and vitality. But let's find a spot to tether her then. There's a wide wooden roof right next to the gate that shelters carts, crates, and sacks. You move your mount next to a donkey, to a beam placed here just for this purpose. Without a moment of hesitation, Egg starts to chew on the nearby haystack. You have some time to make sure it doesn't struggle with your bundles. You return to the inn. I look for the mare and approach her. She's sitting on a chair with a 4-year-old boy on her knees. She's holding his hand gently, showing him how to eat gruel from a bowl. It's not a cheap meal, though. You spot nuts, berries, and milk, and the added honey makes it yellowish. The kid is clean and quiet, and once he notices your arrival, he crams his mouth with a spoonful of oats. Now, love, the mare titters. Do not get distracted. She rubs the meal off his face. A few more spoons and you'll go to help Papa in the kitchen, aye? She gives you a radiant, though apologetic smile, then turns her attention back to her companion. I observe her more closely. Her long, full-sleeved linen dress must have been dyed once in blue and once in red to achieve its dark, fancy purple, which would draw looks even in Hovlavon. From her left shoulder hangs a green woolen cape as thin as a shawl. The brown belt on her waist has a large steel buckle that portrays a running deer with unrealistically large antlers growing in all directions like tree branches. Unlike her tribesfolk, she's pale, with powdered and rouged cheeks, and her lips match her outfit, though they're a bit closer to wine red. The thick gray strands in her long blonde hair look like more of a fashion choice than a result of aging. Her eyes are the color of her cape, keen and vigorous. She's shorter than most people around, though would still be the tallest woman in most of the northern settlements. While she's around 40, her slim hands add fragility to her experience, even though her posture is upright, her legs confidently crossed, and her delicate voice assertive. She makes plenty of gestures, but her shoulders hardly ever move. Even amongst books that I have enjoyed both in audio and in text, I have scarcely seen a finer description of an individual's entire disposition anywhere. Even in digital media, games and movies, you'll hardly see something as elegant and subtle, yet full and thorough, as something as this. We have not only a description of the mayor's looks, but also how she speaks and her general appearance elsewise, in addition to her position as an authority in this town, which, as the forerunning text has given, the vehicle stirred up, as the forerunning text has given, lets us know that there is a strong sense of place all throughout the entirety of Howler's Dell. Good stuff. And let's see. I have the options of I wait for as long as it takes, or I need no invitations. I sit down on a bench. But with the mayor, it's probably best to be at least a little bit more cordial. After a few more minutes, the boy lets out a gentle cough, and after a pat on the back, the mayor puts him on the ground. You did a great job, love. But now I need to speak with our guest. Darling, she addresses one of the inn workers, a girl close to 15. Take him to father, will you? Her tone suddenly gets firmer, leaving no hint of a question or suggestion. Yes, Ma, she responds. Both her hair and her eyes are nothing like those of her brother, and neither of the kids resemble their mother. So we have a Roadwarden again? Please, sit down. She vaguely shows you the palm of her open hand, letting you pick any place you want. Well, since I'm a guest, I could sit on a bench next to her, or sit on a stool opposite of her. I'm here as a trade partner. Again, cordiality will perhaps go a long way. The flowing water hits silently, the rocks and wooden stakes surrounding the isle, then splits into two stream beds. In Havlavan, the river is surrounded by tall walls protecting the banks from deterioration, and the water is seldom free of dirt. Here, the smell is as fresh as it would be in the woods. The mayor observes your outfit carefully, at first looking as if she just ate an onion, but then puts on a polite smile. Once your eyes meet, she hardly ever looks away. I'm sure you're hungry. My husband will bring us something soon. And, I could say, yes, nothing is free, or I'm not hungry. Wow. I could cut to the chase, or I could simply take it and run. I think I'll take it and run. Do not mention it. Hunger makes me peevish, and the day is too nice for that. She taps her chest and looks at a flock of birds that fly above you loudly, heading south. As you're waiting, be so good as to help me understand something. Even you're but a mercenary, I can imagine a single reason for you to choose this realm for your wardening, this so long after Asterian's disappearance. There's nae glory or treasures to find here. Her pale fingers form a tent on her stomach, then clasp, leaving the forefinger pointing at you. You were sent here by the merchants. They want the peninsula. They surely do. Well, I don't think vulnerable is necessarily the right choice. I could be playful, or I could be friendly. Well, let's see what the others have to go through here. Or intimidating. Surely not. Especially since I want to support the people here. Hmm. Well, perhaps vulnerable was the right choice. Well, she caught me. I don't hide the fact that I'm the guild's representative of needing new opportunities. You introduce yourself and confirm her suspicions. The war was merciless for all the coastal cities, and now the chief is in agreement with the merchants. Together, we're stronger. You touch on... could that have been me? I suppose it could have been me. The war was merciless for all the coastal cities. No, 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 no. You touch on the more obvious parts of a potential deal with the city, such as taxes, but draw her attention back to the matters of safety. It was me then. Keeping to yourself, you put your people at risk. Your voice shakes slightly. By joining the 10 cities, you'll protect your people, your land. Throughout your speech, the mayor observes you without interruptions, but her fingers are tapping on the deer buckle with frustration. Finally, she takes a deep breath and looks away at her tribesfolk. It's foolish of you to assume our weakness, Kairos. We don't need help from the cities, nor protection. We don't need help, and I hope to find more than survival. When she looks directly into your eyes, you flinch. I need real partners, ones who will help, ones who will aid us in our growth. Ones that don't hide any catch in their promises. Her accent is now almost identical to the one used in the city. Ooh, spicy. What sort of catch? You don't have to trust anyone blindly. The negotiations can satisfy both sides. You're speaking from experience, I assume. Wow. I don't think that Havlavon has anyone but its own best interest in mind. We know for a fact they would certainly have a catch on many aspects, especially considering the paganry of the area. I think it's best to assume she knows best. Do I really sound that confident? She titters and waves her hand by her chin, as if you just offered her a compliment. I've seen such negotiations during my studies, though I can't say I took an active part in them. Let me show you an example. She theatrically clears her throat, patting her chest with one hand and covering her mouth with another, then leans forward and rests on her elbows, allowing her hands to freely make gestures. You make a deal with a settlement. Flour and wool in exchange for coin and tools. You send the first traders and they imply that you're ready to pay for more. Let's say parchment. Months later, you want no more rye, just the parchment and wool. We can't butcher any more mouflons, the locals say. Don't worry, you answer. Don't worry, you answer. We'll send you a small flock. Just turn one of your fields into a pasturage. As she pretends to speak as different characters, her voice comically shifts, and she has no issue switching between accents. I will definitely encourage her with a kind smile. She swings her hand above the table. Another year goes by, and while there's more parchment, the village lacks some crops. The tribe needs not just tools and coins, plenty of coins, but also seeds, and the guild is not satisfied. Sending our wagons costs a lot, and there are more highwaymen now. If you want us to come again, you need to send more mouflons, and to sell us their cheese. And guess what? With a haunting laugh, she straightens up and spreads her arms, like someone a third her age. Turns out that the villagers can't say no anymore. They lack supplies, seeds, and land. They can't refuse. I nod. She's right, and it's better not to say anything stupid. Don't you think the city would see value in keeping you strong? Fewer risks for them. I smile. I have no doubt that a smart leader like yourself is going to protect her people from these games. Absolutely the last. She is clearly not on one. She has got the chops for the job. Oh, how wonderful. Keep the compliments coming. No soul in the square reacts to her loud laughter. But all that doesn't mean I can counter every single city ploy on my own. That's the good thing about living here, with these kind of people all around us. She nods toward two little girls that are carrying a basket filled with vegetables between them. If some of us struggle, we all have to deal with the consequences. We all struggle, but we all benefit. But Havlavan, if they see profit in chopping off our arms, they'll sell them to the first bidder. She gives you a sad glance, but cheers up after a sigh. Let's finish the introductions. I'm Ty, one of the keepers of the Ape Ale Inn, and the mayor of Howler's Dell. I assume it would be convenient for you to take my answer back to Havlavan. She wonders for a moment. Say, when could we expect the first caravan? After winter? It depends on what you can sell, and what you want in return. While the conversation goes on, the food gets served. The refreshing aroma of a roasted mutton covered with a thick sauce made of mint, parsley, and honey tempts you to bite in right away. The juices are sinking into the round trencher, a plate made of simple brown bread. There's also a small bowl filled with chopped red radishes and a sliced boiled egg, and a mug filled with cold buttermilk. It's all brought by a few young people, all of them referring to the mayor as their mother, and in the end, the innkeeper himself shows up to wish you a good meal. He's wearing a clean orange tunic and a not-so-clean apron made of hemp. He politely introduces himself as Eric's, and, after confirming you won't get sick from what he prepared, he leaves you with his wife and to your conversation. Tice tears the meat into smaller pieces, then eats slowly, often expressing her enjoyment with a hum. This gets it. This really gets it. Alright. It's almost, an hour and a half and only one cup of coffee through. Let's have a little bit more. And while I'm pouring, allow me to extol the virtues of managing to make a meal properly of the period, of the resources that are available in the setting that has been set forth appropriately. Not overcome with rich spices, not overwhelming with some sort of massive festivity or flair to the whole thing, but a simple, hearty, proper meal made of the meats, vegetables, and cooking methods that they have available to them right here in a small village on a river with some pastures and some fields. There are many extremes that can be taken in narrativizing the culinary traditions of a place and its peoples. But accounting for not only the means and methods they possess, but also the mode by which they come to be possessed and produced, without falling to rugged, grimdark-esque callousness, belittling the traditions of the individuals in light of our contemporary realities, or blowing it out of proportion as though it is some sort of truly, unbelievably incomparably fantastic affair, without any heed for what is actually available to those here, to the peoples that produce it, is a proper feat of world building and applied lore. It can't help but bring a smile to my face. Meanwhile, we get to the important stuff. And all to be sandwiched into an introduction of Ty, the mayor of the realm. Sounds like the nearby ground is fertile. The village would gladly pay its taxes in grain and vegetables, with the expectation that a squad of soldiers would provide additional protection. Our youth is strong, she claims proudly, so we don't need your guards on our walls. But a lone roadwarden won't keep the roads passable. We need fighters willing to patrol the paths, maybe even the heart of the woods. That's what we'd expect in return. You're not an expert when it comes to linen, cheese, and wool, so the mayor spends a good couple of minutes describing the outstanding quality of what the village has to offer, especially the clothes, which are meant to be as unique as those made by Master Crispus. You vaguely recognize the name of this tailor shoemaker, but you've never earned enough to pay him for as much as a single sleeve. And of course, we will never reject some steel and bronze. We lack alloys for sickles and scythes. She then repeats her question about starting a trade route. Truth be told, the guild is not sure what the peninsula has to offer. It's going to take more than your village to convince them. Understandable, but you won't find much in the other tribes. They have barely enough to survive, even after the trade for our crops, for we have the only decent soil in this realm. At least the peoples of Gale Rocks have salt and barrels of fish, while Creeks sells meat and wood. Actually, if you haven't been in Creeks yet, the farthest village in the northeast, you could give them a chance. She nods with a smile. They could use your help with keeping the road safe. White Marshes, on the other hand, as well as Old Pagos, are close to worthless. For a trade route, that is. She clears her throat. After these words, she stands up, walks to another table, and offers her trencher to an elderly man who sits there by himself. With a trembling voice, he thanks her, then starts to chew on the soggy bread. She sits down, wipes her hand into a clean cloth, adjusts the folds of her cape, and once again crosses her legs. So tell me, Kairos, how's Havlavan? I haven't gathered much news since the invasion. Things stay humble, but are starting to look brighter. The harbor is full of life and the kids grow strong. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Not everyone has their own bed, but the new generation is ready to start their own fight. It's far from great. Children who have lost their parents during the war have no trade in hand, and there's not enough settlements to send them away. Many people are unable to prosper. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It couldn't be easy, not after all the blows that landed on that place. That's the thing with the works of humans, isn't it? A house you build for half a year turns to dust with a single storm. Proud city falls, the Emperor's mask shatters. The children from this village, she glances at a young girl cleaning the table, are just as fragile. They have food, clothes, and walls, but there will be a time of disaster. And once it strikes, and only then, they'll take to heart the same lessons that the cities had to learn, and it will be forgotten again after the next sunny spring. She pauses and looks at you with a sad smile. But don't let me babble any longer. What can I do for you, Kairos? That's a telling line. Let me actually add some sweetness to this coffee. Should preserve my throat for a time yet longer. While I do that, I'm looking for Asterion. What would it take to make you consider joining Havlavon? Have you considered the necromancers in the north? You seem to be fairly well off, even more so than the rest of other people in the village. What's your secret? Tell me about Howler's Dell. I was in the ruined village south from here. What do you think about the scavenger who was here before? I was in the Pelt of the North. The innkeeper feels uneasy about Glaucius' band. I saw a weird tree south from here, the one with the altar standing in front of it. And thank you for your time are our options. Wow. I think since Pelt of the North is our first ally in this territory, best to see what they think about that. And I'm sure we'll encounter bandits in our own time nonetheless. When you mention the raids on the northern villages, her eyes narrow. There we go. Are you sure? The first I've heard about it. Glacia has been around since years back, but she's not much of a nuisance. I'm just a messenger. He's asking for you to join forces with him. Well, I can't give you my answer. I won't ask our hunters to endanger their lives in pursuit of some gossip. I could ask around, learn more about this. Or, I don't have time for this. Should I tell the innkeep that you're interested in collaboration? That you're not interested in collaboration? I want to learn more. Absolutely. She sighs with exaggerated relief. What a splendid idea! There are only 3 villages in the north. White Marshes, farther north by the western road, Gill Rocks by the northern coast, and creeks in the far east. Bring me news from those places, and you will get my answer. I'm paid for passing the message here to Pelt of the North. Asking me to ride for you through half of the peninsula and back is a different deal entirely. Well, I do need coin, and I do need time. I have been making good time so far, but perhaps not enough for all of that. She lets out a brief chuckle, but her eyes observe you carefully. And how much are you getting paid, if I can ask? 3 dragons or you can't. I'll play it straight with her. And I'll pay you another 3. Fair? Fair. I wonder, back in Havlavon, did you spend any time in Backwood Corner? It used to be this dark, dirty alley, with muggers working, even in the daylight. I stayed there with Octavia, the miller, in exchange for doing chores for her. She had this small wooden hut. Since the war, even the soldiers have avoided that street. People say it's a home for thugs. You wouldn't recognize it. It's now a respectable street, with one of the fanciest inns in the city, the Apple and the Boar. It would make you feel like you're in the old days. The Boarhead Inn is almost 50 years old now. There's no such street anymore. It fell to a great fire. Well, I see I can make something of a choice for the fate of the thing itself. Hmm. Huh. I think well, given what, our buddy down the innkeep down in, Pelt of the North said, the single-name taverns tend to have something of a less than desirable reputation. But those with a longer, at least 2 words, there's something that is considered respectable. Hmm. But I think that the Boarhead could do with something. You explained that while the place is still called the bad part of the city, The boarhead makes good coin selling beer and ale to students, mercenaries, and adventurers. The whole land may turn wild one day, you quote one of the local traders, but Backwood Corner will stay the same. She sighs with relief and puts her hand to her hip. Comforting, don't you think? That there are still places, these dark corners, where you can always find what you expect. Living there, though, that sounds awful and always was. She chuckles. I bet the thugs of my youth are no longer around, so I wouldn't count on them giving me a free pass. But I wish I could have a chance to drink a mug or two with the innkeep once more. The old lady was always too good to stay in that muck. Well, I am looking for Asterion. Let's see what she can tell me about that. And from a fellow named Andrew, why? Why indeed? And I take that as a why for yes. She stares you in the eyes, then turns toward Egg. Is your palfrey a mare? We have 2 jacks and could use some mules. A stallion, so it won't give you anything stronger than a hinny. It is, but I need it to stay strong and healthy, and I'm looking for Asterion. Well, probably a great way to make some dragon bones, but I don't think right now is the best time for that. Well, I don't have another mount, that's for sure. I am looking for Asterion, though. I heard you, but he's not welcome here. Her voice is harsh. And I don't know where he went. We haven't burned him, or fought his awoken shell. Wherever he is... A long pause. It's not our problem. What are his wrongdoings? If you have to know, he failed, and won't get a second chance. He was meant to escort Aegidia, a daughter of mine, to her betrothed in Gale Rocks. She was a great archeress, and the road from here to the coast is not that dangerous. When they saw goblins on the road, Asterion ordered her to push through, right into their trap. She touches her deer-shaped buckle. They got jumped like a bunch of wealthy pilgrims. A Roadwarden worth their gruel should know better. He can fight with a blade, but my girl? She never had a chance. She sighs and looks at the gate. He disappeared soon after his pitiful attempt at apologizing to me, and we closed our doors behind him for good. I'll let you know if he ever tries to return. Well, any ideas of where I can look for him? Why did you let him leave? Did you ever find your daughter? And thanks for the help. Well, sounds like quest fuel. For a few breaths, her green eyes seek something in your face. Her words are careful, yet hesitant. She's with the fogs now. The goblins were after food, so they carried her shell away. One day she's going to charge at our walls, awoken and empty. Even though she was a bit mawkish, her heart was strong and patient. She listened to people, was ready to help them and to cry with them. I could tell you stories, but what for? Let the dead rest. Off. Especially for one as maternal as her. Well, on that, you do seem to have quite a big family. She titters weakly. At one point, there were 12 kids living in our house. 9 girls, 3 boys. They come and go, as it should be. A few are already with the forest, but most are all grown now, even started their own families. She looks away at a girl wiping spilled milk with a wet cloth. To be perfectly clear, they aren't exactly our children. It's a custom of our village for the mayor to look after the orphans. Thankfully, Erix has a big heart, and much more patience than I do. As she speaks, her smile widens. Well, why did you let him leave? He didn't do anything, well, forbidden by our laws. He was simply stupid, and cannot be trusted. But this isn't Tovlavan. We have no rich folk to dread. We treat each other fairly. Lost in her thoughts, she rubs the neckline of her dress. One good thing I can say about him is that he didn't try to justify his decisions, or to avoid the consequences. But I'd rather have him prove first he can do what's asked of him. Any ideas of where I can look for him? She adjusts her cape with an annoyed shrug. Try asking for him in the north. He spent most of his time between white marshes, gale rocks, and creeks. Here, he wasn't that eager to share his plans. Thanks for the help. Tell me, how do people dress in the city these days? Is it similar to what we have here? Before the war, the merchants were wearing those really long dresses and robes, way too long for my taste. They got mud stains after every rain, and I see no reason to keep shoes completely hidden. Not anymore. There's always a shortage of fabric. Most people wear tunics like in the old days. For years, there was not enough hemp and wool at hand, so people have started to wear furs again. As far as I can tell, many folks wear headgear. I'm not sure. I don't pay much attention to fashion. I think knowing that fur is a good option. Now that's just sad. When I was there, only the monks wore them for some reason. I've no doubt that the vengeful beasts have thrown the roads into a nightmare. The city folk would be smarter putting on rags. Even though she sighs, there's a cruel satisfaction in her smile. Well, how about those necromancers in the north, then? She taps her fingers on the table. Yes, I have. After you ask her to tell you more, she seems to regain her confidence. You mean White Marshes, for sure. I don't know all that much about what's happening there. We avoid their lands if we can. She frowns. I shouldn't gossip about it with strangers. We can talk about it on another occasion. Fair. Well, how do you seem so well off, then? How do you keep that money in the bag? She reaches for her buckle, and her voice grows cold. There's no secret, traveler. There's hard work, risks, and sacrifices, and the support of those that care about me. The good things that happen to me shine on my people just as much. Think about it before you mention it again. She adjusts her cape. Okay, touchy subject then. Well, how about the ruined village, huh? Her tense gaze shifts into an awkward click of her tongue as she leans away from you. I don't even want to think about their tragic fate. No one can negotiate with the wrath of the herds. A long pause. And I better not find you upsetting my neighbors with these sad questions. It was a challenging time for all of us, a wound we won't forget. I guarantee that. Well, since there was a tree in that village, and a weird tree south of here, what do you think of that? She straightens up and raises her chin. You mean Beholder, the guardian spirit of our wetlands. Every fall, we bring it our gifts, and in return, it provides us with its blessed fruit, the flesh of the forest. She stares into your eyes. It's older than the oldest books, and the oldest thoughts. The druids help us honor its sleep and show us how to ask for its help. Neither of these rituals, she scoffs, would be of use for you. I don't know all about that, Chief. Given our experience there, I think there's much to be had. Well, how about the scavenger? Ah, he's alive, she says with distaste. He brought us some news from the north and paid off his debt to us, but he's an idler and a prattler. Drinks, too. The farther away he stays from here, the better. I guarantee that the pelt will be happy with that, then. Well, tell me about Howler's Dell. It is what it seems like. The greatest village in the far north. She raises her hand and makes an inviting gesture. Though I hope to improve this and that. She winks at you, but is suddenly interrupted by a pain cry of a little boy who hurt his knee during a fall. As an amused elder tries to calm him down, the mayor shrugs it off and titters, then meets your eyes again. Life's good here. We have what we need, and a lot of what we want, building on top of more than 12 generations of hard work and bravery. He spends a good few minutes telling you about mouflons, wheat, rye, hemp, cheese, and wool, proud of every glimpse of prosperity. Whenever she mentions an artisan, shepherd, or farmer, she doesn't miss a chance to mention how significantly she improved their conditions. She also omits some topics. You hear of no-tales, songs, ancestors, rituals, or days of prayer. It's like listening to a tax collector. Only at the end of her speech does she mention the wisdom of the elders, now kept in the teachings of the druids, who help her guide those who don't trust her, who help her guide those who trust her. They heal our wounds and our gardens, she explains, but then changes the topic to all the fruit, trees, hairs, and nuts in the woods. When she's done with it, I nod politely. We talk and talk, but I still don't know where you are from, Kairos. What's your story? Have you lived in Havlavon your entire life? In a way. I know it as well as any other city folk, but every spring I trained in horsemanship in a nearby village. Only for a bit. I was raised in a small village just nearby, and moved to the city after I had decided to look for luck as a Roadwarden. Wow. I've already said I'm not from Havlavon. I think I'll stick to it. To see the city... To see the city for the first time, after being surrounded by a couple of small houses and fields. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? She puts her hand on the table. Even after my second winter, there I still felt like a stranger. But those who know how to live in the countryside, close to the wilderness, we will always find a new home for ourselves, don't you think? She gives you an encouraging smile. And so I would. And now the accursed question. I'd rather not have them with Havlavon. They're doing quite well on their own out here. Ah, I can consider it right now, while she laughs. Her eyes remain keen. But if you want me to give you some answers, let's see. She looks up into the right, theatrically raising her hand to her chin. Some gestures of goodwill would be a great start. Since you're the guild's messenger, I need to know that you can be relied on. She gives you a wide, white grin. And that's only the first step, I assume. Of course. Do you even have the power to handle tax negotiations? She scoffs loudly at your headshake. Do enough for my village and I'll hand you a beautiful signed letter. A list of all the things my neighbors are looking for, as well as what they can give in return. Your superiors are going to see more than enough to prepare their offer. She rubs her hands. I think that's fair. Yeah, looks like we're in agreement, or do enough for my village is a bit vague. If I can spoil this, I might just. She nods towards the people gathered by the tables. I'm not the ruler of this place. My friends trust me because I see things as they are, and am willing to act. Prove that you're helpful and they'll be happy to match your efforts. I want you to succeed. She puts her hand on her chest. But we don't give strangers more than we can get from them. If you want me to argue in your favor, show us your worth. Looks like we're in agreement. Perfect. One more thing, though. She puts her elbows on the table, leaning closer to you. If you go behind my back, I'm not going to wait for a dagger. I'll end you first. She rests her chin against her open palms, giving you a disarmingly warm smile. I'm sure people already know that we have a new Roadwarden. Maybe ask around to see if anyone needs your help. The more my neighbors trust you and need you, the more willing they'll be to offer you better pay. Well, let's start here. What can I do for you? Ah, so kind of you to ask. But before I ask you to run, let's see how you can walk, shall we? Her eyes wander left and right, and she gestures for a nearby guard to move away. He nods, then gestures at a few other souls to follow him. While a few of the locals cast curious looks at you, they turn away as quickly as you notice them. The mayor's shiny green eyes still locked on you, and her voice is close to a whisper. Since Astarion's disappearance, there's little trade on the roads, and not much news reaches us. Be so kind. Her flirtatious tone distracts you with how obviously fake it is. And help me learn some interesting tales about our neighbors. I smile back at her. You mean ones that weren't meant to reach you? Or, I'm not a spy. Well, I could ingratiate myself or effectively break off the basic amount of goodwill that I have here. It might mean going against Howler's Den. Or I might be able to turn on her if she does have ill will. But she doesn't seem to at this moment anyway. That being said, she is quite an authority in the area. And she might be willing to sell out to Hovlevon. Though she is in good graces with the druids. I'll at least give it a shot. See, I knew that deep down you're a true sage. She titters and straightens up, adjusting her cape without haste. Do you have something to share? The squad that made camp at the southern crossroads is now nothing more than 2 people. They plan to return to Hovlevon before fall. Or that's all I have to say. Well, no harm in telling them about the outpost anyway. Since they cleared the camp... okay. Since they cleared the camp of brigands, they went so quiet I almost forgot about them. She rubs her chin with her thumb. I'm surprised they managed to stay alive till this day. Sending such an inexperienced group here shows that the officials misjudged this land. That is all I have to say, and I have full agreement on that. I keep thinking, surely city folk don't eat just wild game, salt fish and groats. What animals do people breed in the nearby villages? Mostly ibex. They do well on the hills. There's a lot of mouflons. The monks need their parchment. It depends. Mostly pond fish and fell, but some can afford to buy boars. There's barely any meat, so people have started to raise crickets and rats. Whatever people can buy, I guess. I don't eat animals when I can avoid it. Hmm. Well, another bit of story we can select. The verticality we're granted in offering not only a description of our backstory, but our perception of the lands we originate from in or around Havlavan parallels very nicely with the more open and free opportunities presented by things like TTRPGs, while also making it applicable, useful, implementable to something like this text-based game. I think, in addition to the opportunity granted by electing the tone for your particular dialogue throughout various key pivots, and also asserting your own backstory and perspective on things, asserting your own backstory and outlook on things, it enables the player to take a holistic rather than purely reductive stake in everything that is part of this whole world. It does well. Insofar as what I'll choose, given the dire situation of the cities, I think it's reasonable that they might just start to raise crickets and rats. She covers her mouth. I've tasted a few rats before, of course, but crickets? How do they taste? It depends on the way you cook them and what you feed them with. A bit like nuts, but they're also ground into a flour of sorts. They're good. I don't know. I don't have a stomach for them, and they look disgusting. Well, for me and my tastes, I think that, you know, hmm, I'll be direct about it, you know? I think, if one were given the opportunity to raise crickets, you'd probably want to talk about exactly, how you prepare them properly. And it's interesting that the character has enough wherewithal written in to have a proper response to something so shocking as crickets being on the menu. Purely fascinating. At least now I know that if someone serves me a plate of insects, it's not in the front, she titters. Though I do hope they don't taste as good as mutton. I'm not going to sell our livestock cheap. Always ready to turn on a profit. Well, do you need my assistance? First, I need to be sure you can handle yourself. Bring me some juicy rumors, won't you? And maybe talk with my neighbors. We could use a few coins or someone with a steady hand. Well, I'll try. Doesn't trust me enough to give me a job. I get that. You're in front of the Ape Ale Inn. Well, be that as it may, we have just crossed over 2 hours, and it seems like Owler's Den is genuinely quite rich with various options for us to take. Now, given that we left off on page 16, if I recall rightly, uh, and I'll check on that in a moment during our first recess. This is almost certainly going to have to be a three-parter in trying to get through the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath. And there is certainly many more hours left in Roadwarden. So we are not exactly short on options for what we can pursue next in the game. And there will be plenty of time left in reading the book. So I think after a brief recess, we'll get right into starting the Dream-Quest of Unknown Kadath proper. Until then, I will be right back. Still centered. Just about. Alright. Minor adjustment later, and we are back. So, now having quite the warmed up voice, let us get into the book. And since the last time, I recall that we were having quite a bit of traffic noise, hopefully, with the recent rainfall that was absolutely blitzing the area in the last few hours. We'll have less of that. Especially with the storm clouds moving overhead. And, given that, we will start back just at the last paragraph, since it carries very immediately into the following page. Let's aim for, I would say page 30 tonight, I would hope. The next day, he rose with the lava gatherers and exchanged farewells as they rode west and he rode east on a zebra he bought of them. Their older men gave him blessings and warnings, and told him he had better not climb too high on Ingranek, but while he thanked them heartily, he was in no wise dissuaded. For still did he feel that he must find the gods on unknown Kadath, and win from them a way to that haunting and marvelous city in the sunset. By noon, after a long uphill ride, he came upon some abandoned brick. He came upon some abandoned brick villages of the hill people who had once dwelt thus close to Ingranek and carved images from its smooth lava. Here he had dwelt till the days of the old tavern keeper's grandfather, but about that time they felt their presence was disliked. I think a car was going throughout that. Here they had dwelt till the days of the old tavern keeper's grandfather, but about that time they felt that their presence was disliked. Their homes had crept even up to the mountain slope, and the higher they built, the more people they would miss when the sun rose. At last they decided it would be better to leave altogether, since things were sometimes glimpsed in the darkness, which no one could interpret favorably, so in the end all of them went down to the sea and dwelt in Bahama, inhabiting a very old quarter, and teaching their sons the art of image-making, which to this day they carry on. It was from these children of the exiled hill people that Carter had heard the best tales of Ingranek when searching through Bahama's ancient taverns. It was from these children of the exiled hill people that Carter had heard the best tales about Ingranek when searching through Bahama's ancient taverns. All this time, the great gaunt side of Ingranek was looming up higher and higher as Carter approached it. There were sparse trees on the lower slopes and feeble shrubs above them, and then the bare hideous rock rose spectral into the sky, to mix with frost and ice and eternal snow. The bad luck continues with cars, and apparently things falling in the background. Let's regain our place. There was there were sparse trees on the lower slopes and feeble shrubs above them, and then the bare, hideous rock rose spectral into the sky to mix with frost and ice and eternal snow. Carter could see the rifts and ruggedness of that somber stone, and did not welcome the prospect of climbing it. In places there were solid streams of lava and scoriac heaps. I should probably look up that pronunciation too. And I believe I've got the pronunciation right, but Ancient Greek. I think I might well have. Well, very good then. In places there were solid streams of lava and scoriac heaps that littered slopes and ledges. 90 aeons ago, before even the gods had danced upon its pointed peak, that mountain had spoken with fire and roared with the voices of the inner thunders. Now it towered all silent and sinister, bearing on the hidden side that secret titanic image where rumor told. And there were caves in that mountain, which might be empty and alone with elder darkness, or might, if legend spoke truly, hold horrors of a form not to be surmised. The ground sloped upwards to the foot of Ingranek, thinly covered with thinly covered with scrub oaks and ash trees, and strewn with bits of rock, lava, and ancient cinder. There were the charred embers of many camps, where the lava gatherers went, where the lava gatherers were wont to stop, and several rude altars which they had built either to propitiate the great ones or to ward off what they dreamed of in Ingranek's high passes and labyrinthine caves. The tone doesn't feel right. Welcome, Egg. Hmm. There were charred embers of many camps, where the lava gatherers were wont to stop, and several rude altars which they had built either to propitiate the great ones, or to ward off what they dreamed of in Ingranek's high passes and labyrinthine caves. At evening, Carter reached the farthermost pile of embers and camped for the night, tethering his zebra to a sapling and wrapping himself well in his blankets before going to sleep. And all through the night, a Vunith. That one threw me. And all through the night, a Vunith howled distantly from the shore of some hidden pool. But Carter felt no fear of that amphibious terror, since he had been told with certainty that not one of them dares even to approach the slope of Ingranek. In the clear sunshine of morning, Carter began the long ascent, taking his zebra as far as that useful beast could go, but tying it to a stunted ash tree when the floor of the thin wood became too steep. And a car comes. And where were we? But tying it to a stunted ash tree when the floor of the thin wood became too steep. Thereafter, he scrambled up alone, first through the forest with its ruins of old villages and overgrown clearings, and then over the tough grass where anemic shrubs grew here and there. He regretted coming clear of the trees, since the slope was very precipitous and the whole thing rather dizzying. At length, he began to discern all the countryside spread out beneath him whenever he looked about. The deserted huts of the image makers, the groves of resin trees, and the camps of those who had gathered from them, the wood. We'll have to try that again after this one passes. So much for the rain driving people back inside. At length he began to discern At length he began to discern all the countryside spread out beneath him, whenever he looked about. The deserted huts of the image makers, the groves of resin trees, and the camps of those who gathered from them. The groves of the resin trees, and the camps of those who gathered from them. The woods. Good. The woods where prismatic magas nest and sing, and even a hint, very far away, of the shores of Yath, and those forbidding ancient ruins whose name is forgotten. He found it best not to look around, and kept on climbing and climbing till the shrubs became very sparse, and there was often nothing but the tough grass to cling to. Then the soil became meager, with great patches of bare rock cropping out, and now and then the nest of a condor in a crevice. Finally, there was nothing at all but the bare rock, and had it not been very rough and weathered, he could scarcely have ascended farther. Knobs, ledges, and pinnacles, however, helped greatly, and it was cheering to see occasionally the signs of some lava-gatherer scratched clumsily in the friable stone. Hmm. and it was cheering to see occasionally the sign of some lava gatherer scratched clumsily in the friable stone, and know that wholesome human creatures had been there before him. After a certain height, the presence of man was further shewn by handholds and footholds hewn where they were needed, and by little quarries and excavations where some choice vein or stream of lava had been found. In one place, a narrow ledge had been chopped artificially to an especially rich deposit far to the right of the main line of the ascent. Once or twice, Carter dared to look around, and was almost stunned by the spread of landscape below. Once or twice Carter dared to look around, and was almost stunned by the spread of landscape below. All the island betwixt him and the coast lay open to his sight, with Baharna's stone terraces and the smoke of its chimneys mystical in the distance. And beyond that, the illimitable southern sea, with all its curious secrets. Thus far there had been much winding around the mountain, so that the farther and carven side was still hidden. Carter now saw a ledge running upward and to the left, which seemed to head the way he wished, and this course he took in hope that it might prove continuous. After 10 minutes, he saw it was indeed no cul-de-sac, but that it led steeply on in an arc that would, unless suddenly interrupted or deflected, bring him after a few hours climbing to that unknown southern slope overlooking the desolate crags and the accursed valley of lava. As new country came into view below him, he saw that it was bleaker and wilder than those seaward lands he had traversed. The mountain side, too, was somewhat different, being here pierced by curious cracks and caves not found on the straighter route he had left. Some of these were above him, and some beneath him, all opening on sheerly perpendicular cliffs, and wholly unreachable by the feet of man. The air was very cold now, but so hard was the climbing that he did not mind it. Only the increasing rarity bothered him, and he thought that perhaps it was this which had turned the heads of other travelers and excited those absurd tales of night gods, whereby they explain the loss of such climbers as fell from these perilous paths. He was not much impressed by the travelers' tales, but had a good curved scimitar in case of any trouble. All lesser thoughts were lost in the wish to see that carven face, which might set him on the track of the gods atop unknown Kadath. At last, in the fearsome iciness of upper space, he came round fully to the hidden side of Ingranek, and saw in infinite gulfs below him the lesser crags and sterile abysses of lava which marked olden wrath of the great ones. There was unfolded, too, a vast expanse of country to the south, but it was a desert land without fair fields or cottage chimneys, and seemed to have no ending. No trace of the sea was visible on this side, for Oriab is a great island. Black caverns and odd crevices. No trace of the sea was visible on this side, for Oriab is a great island. Black caverns and odd crevices were still numerous on the sheer vertical cliffs, but none of them was accessible to a climber. There now loomed aloft a great beetling mass which hampered the upward view, and Carter was for a moment shaken with doubt lest it prove impassable. And one of the distance. Thank you, Egg. Always happy to be trying my best. And then they cross paths. One coming and one going. Such is life. sometime I'll get that sound barrier set up. I have some things set outside that I would hope, or would have hoped, would have made a difference, and I've gotten some attempts at soundproof blankets hung, but sound barriers are not sufficient for such loud motors, unfortunately. Let's see anywhere. Where were we? Hmm. Poised by Poised in windy insecurity miles above Earth, with only space and death on one side and only slippery walls of rock on the other, he knew for a moment the fear that makes men shun Ingranek's hidden side. He could not turn around. He could not turn round, yet the sun was already low. If there were no way aloft, the night would found him crouching there still, and the dawn would not find him at all. Hmm. But there was a way, and he saw it in due season. But there was a way, and he saw it in due season. Only a very expert dreamer could have used those imperceptible footholds, yet to Carter they were sufficient. Surmounting now the outward hanging rock, he found the slope above much easier than that now, since a great glacier's melting had left a generous space with loam and ledges. To the left, a precipice dropped straight from the unknown heights to unknown depths, with with a cave's with a cave's dark mouth just out of reach above him. Elsewhere, however, the mountain slanted back strongly, and even gave him space to lean and rest. He felt from the chill that he must be near the snow line, and looked up to see that glittering pinnacles might be shining in that late ruddy sunlight. Surely enough, there was the snow un- Surely enough, there was the snow uncounted thousands of feet above, and below it a great beetling crag like that. Oh, another editorial issue. An undue period. Right in time for more engines. Mm-mm-mm. Go on, pass. Okay, I believe that's more of a static sound in my uh, noise scrubber should be able to take care of that. I surely hope so, but if not, there are alternatives. But that is certainly a non-static vehicle. Mm-mm. Well, if anybody is watching in the chat, now is a great time to make commentary of your own. earnestly. And there's finally one passing. Hmm. He felt from the chill that he must be near the snow line, and looked up to see what glittering pinnacles might be shining in that late ruddy sunlight. Surely enough, there was the snow uncounted thousands of feet above, and below it a great beetling crag like that he had just climbed, hanging there forever in bold outline. And when he saw that crag, he gasped and cried out aloud, and clutched at the jagged rock in awe, for the Titan bulge had not stayed as Earth's dawn had shaped it. For the Titan bulge had not stayed at Earth's dawn has shaped it. For the Titan bulge had not stayed as Earth's dawn had shaped it, but gleamed red and stupendous in the sunset, with the carved and polished features of a god. But gleamed with red and stupendous, but gleamed red and stupendous in the sunset. But gleamed red and stupendous in the sunset, with the carved and polished features of a god. Stern and terrible shone that face that the sunset lit with fire. How vast it was no mind can ever measure, but Carter knew at once that man could never have fashioned it. It was a god chiseled by the hands of the gods, and it looked down haughtily and majestic upon the seeker. Rumor had it was strange. Rumor had said it was strange, not to be mistaken. Hmm. Rumor had said it was strange, and not to be mistaken. Anytime. Rumor had said it was strange, and not to be mistaken, and Carter saw with all of the waiting. I think I'll go another 30 minutes extra to make up for it. Rumor had said it was strange, and not to be mistaken, and Carter saw that it was indeed so, for those long, narrow eyes and long-lobed ears, and that thin nose and pointed chin, all spoke of a race that is not of men, but of gods. He clung overawed in that lofty and perilous eyrie, even though it was this. He clung overawed in that He clung overawed in that lofty and perilous eyrie, even though it was this which he had expected and come to find. For there is in a god's face more of marvel than prediction can tell. And when that face is vaster than a temple, and seen looking downward at sunset, in the cryptic silences of that upper world from whose dark lava it was divinely hewn of old, the marvel is so strong that none may escape it. Here, too, was added marvel of recognition. Here, too, was the added marvel of recognition. Here, too, was the added marvel of recognition. For although he had planned to search all Dreamland over for those whose likeness to this face might. Come on now. Here, too, was the added marvel of recognition. Here, too, was the added marvel of recognition. For although he had planned to search all Dreamland over for those whose likeness to this face might mark them as the god's children, he now knew that he needed not to he now knew that he needed not do so. Certainly, the great face carven on that mountain was of no strange sort, but the kin of such as he had seen often in the taverns of the seaport Celophias, which lies in Uth-Nargai beyond the Tanarian hills, and is ruled over by that King Karains, whom Carter once knew in waking life. Every year sailors with such a face come in dark ships from the north to trade their onyx for the carved jade and spun gold and little red singing birds of Celophias, and it was clear that these could be no others than the hall gods he sought. And it was clear that these could be no others than the hall gods he sought. Where they dwelt, there must be the cold waste lie close. Where they dwelt, there must be cold waste lie close, and within it unknown Kadath, and its onyx castle for the great ones. So to Celophies he must go, far distant from the Isle of Oriab, and in such parts as would take him back to Dilath Leen. And in such parts as would take him back to Dilath Leen, and up the sky to the bridge of by and up the sky to the bridge by Near, and again into the enchanted wood of the Zoogs, whence the way would bend northward through the garden. Whence the way would bend northward through the garden lands by Urkranos. Whence the way would bend northward through the garden lands by Ukranos to the gilded spires of Thrawn, where he might find a immediately ruined. Eventually. I wish it were so simple as just moving my mic to the opposite end. Whence the way would bend northward through the garden lands by Ukranos to the gilded spires of Thrawn, where he might find a galleon bound over the Serenarian Sea. But dusk was now thick, and the great carven face looked down even sterner in shadow. Perched on that ledge, Night found the Seeker, and in Perched on that ledge, Night found the Seeker, and in the blackness he might neither go down nor go up, but only stand and cling and shiver in that narrow space, till the day came, praying to keep awake lest sleep loose his hold and send him down the dizzy miles of air to the crags and sharp rocks of the accursed valley. The stars came out, but save for them there was only black nothingness in his eyes, nothingness leagued with death, against whose beckoning he might do no more than cling to the rocks and lean back away from an unseen brink. The stars came out, but save for them there was only black nothingness in his eyes, nothingness leagued with death, against whose beckoning he might do no more than cling to the rocks and lean back away from an unseen brink. The last thing of earth that he saw in the gloaming, was a condor's. The last thing of earth that he saw in the gloaming was a condor soaring close to the westward precipice beside him, and darting screaming away when it came near the cave whose mouth yawned just out of reach. Suddenly, without a warning sound in the dark, Carter felt his curved scimitar drawn stealthily out of its belt by some unseen hand. Suddenly, without a warning sound in the dark, Carter felt his curved scimitar drawn stealthily out of his belt by some unseen hand. Then he heard it clatter down over the rocks below, and between him and the Milky Way, I'm going to try a good, deep audio cleaner for noise. Let's see exactly how well it tends to all of this, this nonsense that I continue to face. And even while it might not be the most ideal sound here in the recording, it might end up being one decent thereafter. Then he heard it suddenly, without a warning sound in the dark. Carter felt his curved scimitar drawn stealthily out of his belt by some unseen hand. Then he heard it clatter down over the rocks below, and between him and the Milky Way, he thought he saw a very terrible outline of something noxiously thin and horned and tailed and bat-winged. Other things, too, had begun to blot out patches of stars west of him, as if a flock of vague entities were flapping thickly and silently out of that inaccessible cave in the face of the precipice. Then a sort of cold, rubbery arm seized his neck, and something else seized his feet, and he was lifted inconsiderately up and swung about in space. Another minute, and the stars were gone, and Carter knew that the night gods had got him. They bore him breathless into the... I simply wish to record in peace. But at least we're here at page 20. Better than not. I admit it's hard not to be deflated with all of it. Especially when they roar up. After it seems so plausible that it's finally ceased. I do wish there was some sort of AI model that could, adapt one's voice and filter out everything but. Someday. Anytime now. I can't even make commentary on what I've read and done today because it would be ruined immediately. All right. Finally. Maybe. And then there's finally someone leaving my actual road on a bike. Awesome. Loud enough you can it'll pick it up through the noise gate even. They bore him breathless into that cliffside cavern and through monstrous labyrinths beyond. When he struggled, as at first he did by instinct, they tickled him with deliberation. They made no sound at all themselves, and even their membranous wings were silent. They were frightfully cold and damp and slippery, and their paws needed one detestably. Soon they were plunging hideously downward through inconceivable abysses in a whirling, giddying, sickening rush of dank, tomb-like air, and Carter felt they were shooting into the ultimate vortex of shrieking and demonic madness. He screamed again and again, but whenever he did so, the black paws tickled him with greater subtlety. Then he saw a sort of gray phosphorescence about, and guessed they were coming even to that inner world of subterrene horror of which dim legends tell. I do really sincerely enjoy motorcycles, but man, not like this. I wish I could, I wish one of those ginormous boxes, the sound foam, would be suitable. But I know there's simply too much noise to actually be filtered out by them. Then he saw a sort of gray phosphorescence about, and guessed they were coming even to that inner world of subterrene horror, of which dim legends tell, and which is lit only by the pale death fire wherewith reeks the ghoulish air and the primal mists of the pits at earth's core. At last, far below him, he saw faint lines of gray and ominous. At last, far below him, he saw faint lines of gray and ominous pinnacles, which he knew must be the fabled peaks of Throck. Awful and sinister, they stand in the haunted disk of sunless and eternal depths, higher than man may reckon, and guarding terrible valleys where the doles crawl and burrow, where the doles crawl, where the holes crawl and burrow nastily. But Carter preferred to look at them only But Carter preferred to look at them than only at his captors, which were indeed shocking and uncouth black things with smooth, oily, whale-like surfaces. Shocking and uncouth black things with smooth, oily, whale-like surfaces, unpleasant horns that curved inward toward each other, bat wings whose beating made no sound, ugly, prehensile paws, and barbed tails that lashed needlessly and disquietingly. And just in time. Hmm. My wonder is, how far away are they that they're even making such reverberations? Because it seems that a single continuous band goes on for some time, and it's not a long road either. And worst of all, they never spoke or laughed, and never smiled, because they had no faces at all. And worst of all, they never spoke or laughed, and never smiled, because they had no faces at all to smile with. But only a suggestive blankness where a face ought to be. All they ever did was clutch and fly and tickle. That was the way of night gaunts. As the band flew lower, the peaks of Throck rose gray and towering on all sides, and one saw clearly that nothing lived on that austere and impressive granite of the endless twilight. At still lower levels, the death fires in the air gave out, and one met only the primal blackness of the void, save aloft where the thin peaks stood out goblin-like. Soon, at still lower levels, the death fires in the air gave out, and one met only the primal blackness of the void, save aloft where the thin peaks stood out goblin-like. Soon the peaks were very far away, and nothing about them. Soon the peaks were very far away, and nothing about them. Eventually. Hmm. Heidi, how hello. Uh, for that viewing, if you're inclined towards conversation, there is much time between segments of recording, which could use some proffered, I admit. All right, I think we're quite enough at the moment. Now, where were we? Soon, the peaks were very far away, and nothing but great rushing winds, with the dankness of nethermost grottos in them. Then, in the end of the night gaunts, Then, in the end, the night gaunts landed on a floor of unseen things which felt like layers of bones, and Carter bones, and left Carter all alone in that black valley. To bring the to bring him thither was the duty of the night gaunts that guard Ingranek, and this done, they flapped away silently. When Carter tried to trace their flight, he found he could not, since even the peaks of Throck had faded out of sight. Hmm. There was nothing, anywhere, but blackness, and horror, and horror, and silence, and bones. Now Carter knew from a certain source that he was in the Vale of Now Carter knew from a certain source that he was in the Vale of Panoth, where crawl and burrow the enormous Daholes, but he did not know what to expect, because no one has ever seen a Dahole, or guessed what such a thing may be, or even guessed what such a thing may be like. Daholes are known only by dim rumor. Now Carter knew from a certain source that he was in the Vale of Panoth, where crawl and burrow the enormous Daholes, but he did not know what to expect, because no one has ever seen a Dahole, or even guessed what such a thing may be like. Daholes are known only by dim rumor, from the rustling they make amongst mountains of bones, and the slimy touch they have when they wriggle past one. They cannot be seen, because they creep only in the dark. Carter did not wish to meet a Dahole. They cannot be seen, because they creep only in the dark. Carter did not wish to meet a Dahole, so listened intently for any sound in the unknown depths of bones about him. Even in this fearsome place, he had a plan and an objective, for whispers of Panoth were not unknown to one with whom he had talked much in the old days. For whispers of Panoth were not unknown to one with whom he had talked much in the old days. For whispers of Panoth were not unknown to one with whom he had talked much in the old days. In brief, it seemed fairly likely that this was the spot into which all the ghouls of the In brief, it seemed fairly likely that this was the spot into which all the ghouls of the waking world cast the refuse of their feastings, and that if he but had good luck, he might stumble upon that mighty crag taller than even Throck's peaks, which marks the edge of their domain. Showers of bones would tell him where to look, and once found, he could call to a ghoul to let down a ladder. For, strange to say, he had a very singular link with those terrible creatures. Hmm. Eventually there'll be some quiet. But we are on page 21, which is not bad. Time. Hmm. I had mentioned it once before, but I think at this point I will genuinely consider pushing back the schedule for things. And since I'll have the coming weeks off anyway, it would be a nice cap end to starting at 4 a.m. local. We did have some loud ones rumbling through, but it did take some time. And once found, he could call to a ghoul to let down a ladder. For strange to say, he had a very singular link. Oh, we're never going to get through page 21. I apologize for those tuning in. I'm sure it's not exactly the most brilliant thing to watch. Although, suffering does sell online. And once found, he could call to a ghoul to let down a ladder, for, strange to say, he had a very singular link with those. He had a very singular link with these terrible creatures. A man he had known in Boston, a painter of strange pictures, with a secret studio in an ancient and unhallowed alley near a graveyard, had actually made friends with the ghouls, and had taught him to understand the simpler part of their disgusting meeping and glibbering. This man had vanished at last, and Carter was not sure that he might find him now, and use for the first time in dreamland that faraway English of his dim waking life. A man he had known in Boston, a painter of strange pictures, with a secret studio in an ancient and unhallowed alley near a graveyard, had actually made friends with the ghouls, and had taught him to understand the simpler part of their disgusting meeping and glibbering. This man had vanished at last, and Carter was not sure but that he might find him now. Well, I wish I could let them not get to me, but it's been an entire hour of nothing but. This man had vanished at last, and Carter was not sure but that he might find him now, and use for the first time in dreamland that faraway English of his dim waking life. In any case, he felt he could persuade a ghoul to guide him out of Panoth, and it would be better to meet a ghoul, which one can see, than a Dahol, which one cannot see. So Carter walked in the dark, and ran when he thought he heard something among the bones underfoot. Once he bumped into a stony slope, and knew it must be the base of one of Throck's peaks. Then at last So Carter walked in the dark, and ran when he thought he heard something among the bones underfoot. Once he bumped into a stony slope, and knew it must be the base of one of Throck's peaks. Then at last he heard a monstrous rattling and clatter which reached far up in the air, and became sure he had come and had and became sure he had come nigh of the crag of the ghouls. He was not sure. He was not sure. Sometime. He was not sure he could be heard from this valley miles below, but realized that the inner world has strange laws. As he pondered, he was struck by a flying bone so heavy that it must have been a skull, and therefore realizing his nearness to the fateful crag, he sent up the best and therefore realizing his nearness to the fateful crag, he sent up as best he might that meeping cry. And therefore realizing his nearness to the fateful crag, he sent up as best he might that meeping cry, which is the call of the ghoul. Hmm. I think in the future as well, I'll do book recordings first consistently. That way I don't face at least such a probability of consistent interruption. I might revoke that extra half hour I was considering earlier, because I don't necessarily know if the interruptions would subsist in that duration. If we persist at this tempo, it might even be best to end the stream early. Sound travels slowly, so it was some time before he heard a gibbering answer. But in but it came at last, and before long he was told that a rope ladder would be lowered. The wait for this was very tense, since there was no telling what might not have been stirred up among those bones by his shouting. Indeed, it was not long before he actually did hear a vague rustling afar off. As this thoroughly approached, he became more and more uncomfortable, for he did not wish to move away from the spot where the ladder would come. Finally, the tension grew almost unbearable, and he was about to flee in panic. When the thud of something on the newly heaped bones nearby drew his attention. When the thud of something on the newly heaped bones nearby drew his notice from the other sound. It was the ladder, and after a minute of groping, he had it taut in his hands. But the other sound did not cease, and followed him even as he climbed. He had gone fully 5 feet from the ground when the rattling beneath waxed emphatic, and was a good 10 feet up when something swayed the ladder from below. At a height which must have been 15 or 20 feet, he felt his whole side brushed by a great slippery length which grew alternately convex and concave with wriggling, and hereafter he climbed desperately to escape the unendurable nuzzling of that loathsome and overfed hole whose form no man might see. For hours, he climbed with Yeah, if things don't slow down by the half-hour mark, I think I'm going to call it. Hmm. For hours he climbed with aching and blistered hands, seeing again the gray death fire and Throck's uncomfortable pinnacles. At last he discerned above him the projecting edge of the great crag of the ghouls, whose vertical side he could not glimpse, and hours later he saw a curious face peering over it as a gargoyle peers over a parapet of Notre Dame. As a gargoyle peers over a parapet of Notre Dame. This almost made him lose his hold through faintness, but a moment later he was himself again, for his vanished friend Richard Pickman had once introduced him to a ghoul, and he knew well their canine faces and slumping forms and unmentionable idiosyncrasies. So he had himself well under control when that hideous thing pulled him out of the dizzy emptiness over the edge of the crag, and did not scream at the partly consumed refuse heaped at one side, or at the squatting figures of or or at the squatting circles of ghouls who gnawed and watched curiously. He was now on a dim-lit plain, whose sole topographical features were great boulders and the entrances of burrows. The ghouls were in general respectful. So he had himself well under control when that hideous thing pulled him out of the dizzy emptiness over the edge of the crag, and did not and did not s- and did not scream at the partly consumed refuse heaped at one side, or at the squatting circles of ghouls who gnawed and watched curiously. He was now on a dim-lit plain, whose sole topographic features were great boulders and the entrances of burrows. The ghouls the ghouls were in general respectful, even if one did attempt to pinch him, while several others eyed his leanness speculatively. Through patient glibbering, he made inquiries regarding his vanished friend, and found he had become a... The ghouls were in general respectful. The ghouls were in general respectful, even if one did attempt to pinch him, while several others eyed his lean... Even if one did attempt... The ghouls were in general respectful, even if one did attempt to pinch him, while several others eyed his leanness speculatively. Through patient glibbering, he made inquiries regarding his vanished friend, and found he had become a ghoul of some prominence in abysses nearer the waking world. A greenish, elderly ghoul offered to conduct him to Pickman's present habitation. So, uh, so despite a natural loathing, he followed the creature into a capacious burrow and crawled after him for hours in the blackness of rank mold. They emerged on a dim plain strewn with singular relics of earth, old gravestones, broken urns, and grotesque fragments of monuments, and Carter realized with some emotion that he was probably nearer the waking world than at any other time since he had gone down the 700 steps from the cavern of flame to the gate of deeper slumber. There, on a There, on a tombstone of 1768, stolen from the granary burying ground in Boston, sat a ghoul which was once the artist Richard Upton Pickman. He was naked and rubbery, and had acquired so much of the ghoulish physiognomy that its human age was already obscure. But it still remembered a little English, and was able to converse with Carter in grunts and monosyllables, helped out now and then by the glibbering of the ghouls. When it learned that Carter wished to get to the enchanted woods and from there to the city of Selaphias, into Uthnar beyond the Tanarian hills, it seemed rather doubtful, for these ghouls of the waking world do no business in the graveyards of Upper Dreamland, leaving then Upper Dreamland, leaving that to the red-footed womps that are spawned in dead cities. And many things intervene betwixt their gulf and the enchanted wood, including the terrible kingdom of the Gugs. The Gugs, hairy and gigantic, once reared stone circles in the wood that made strange sacrifices. Well, we're gaining some ground in the 30-minute span I designated. We'll see if it continues to improve. The Gugs, hairy and gigantic, once reared stone circles in the wood and made strange sacrifices to the other gods and the crawling chaos Nyarlathotep. Until one night, an abomination of theirs reached the ears of Earth's gods, and they were banished to caverns below. Only a great trapdoor of stone with an iron ring connects the abyss of the earth ghouls with the enchanted wood, and this the Gungs are afraid to open because of a curse. That a mortal dreamer could traverse their cavern realm and leave by that door is inconceivable, for mortal dreamers were their former food, and for mortal dreamers were their former food, and they have legends of the toothsomeness of such dreamers, even through even though banishment has restricted their diet to the ghasts, those repulsive beings which die on the light, and which live in the vaults of Zin, and leap on long hind legs like kangaroos. So the ghoul that was Pikmin advised Carter either to leave the abyss of Sarkamand, that deserted city in the valley below Leng, where black nitrous stairways, guarded by winged diorite lions. Well, at least while I'm waiting, I can check on that. Oh. Well, that's not what I was looking for. I suppose that's a misspelling. A relic of its time. So the ghoul that was Pikmin advised Carter either to leave the So the ghoul that was Pikmin advised Carter either to leave the abyss at Sarkamand, that deserted city in the valley below Leng, where black nitrous hallways guarded by winged diorite lions lead down from Dreamland to the lower gulfs, or to return through a churchyard to the waking world and begin the quest anew, down the 70 steps of light slumber, to the cavern of flame, and the 700 steps to the gate of deeper slumber and the enchanted wood. This, however, did not suit the seeker, for he knew nothing of the way from Leng to Uth-Nargai, and was likewise reluctant to awake, for he knew nothing of the way from Leng to Uth-Nargai, and was likewise reluctant to awake, lest he forget all he had so far gained in his dream. For he knew nothing of the way from Leng to Uth-Nargai, and was likewise reluctant to awake, lest he forget all that he had so far gained in this dream. It was disastrous to his quest to forget the August It was disastrous to his quest to forget the august and celestial faces of those seamen from the north who traded onyx in Celephias, and who, being the sons of gods, must point the way to the cold waste and Kadath, where the great ones dwell. After much persuasion, the ghoul consented to guide his guest inside the great wall of the Gug's kingdom. There was one There was one chance that Carter might be able to steal through that twilight realm of circular stone towers at an hour when the giants. There was one chance that Carter might. There was one chance that Carter might be able to steal through the twilight realm of circular. There was one chance that Carter might be able to steal through that twilight realm of circular stone towers at an hour when the giants would all. At an hour when the giants would be all gorged and soaring. At an hour when the giants would be all gorged and snoring indoors, and reach that. I'm going to call it here, and as soon as we finish this page, then this is persistent and very dispiriting. There was one chance that Carter might be able to steal through that twilight realm of circular stone towers at an hour when the giants would be all gorged and snoring indoors, and reach the central tower with the sign of Koth upon it, which has the stairs leading up to that stone trapdoor in the enchanted wood. Hickman even consented to lend 3 ghouls to help with the tombstone lever in raising that. Hickman even consented to lend 3 ghouls to help with the tombstone lever in raising the stone door. For of ghouls the Gugs are somewhat afraid, and they often flee from their own colossal graveyards when they are seen feasting there. He also advised Carter to disguise as a ghoul himself, shaving the head he had allowed to grow, for some ghouls have none. Wallowing naked in the mold to get the correct surface, and loping in the usual slumping way, with his clothes carried in a bundle, as if it were a choice morsel from a tomb. They would reach the city of Gugs, which is coterminous with the whole kingdom, through the proper burrows, emerging in a cemetery not far from the stair containing the Tower of Koth. They must beware, however, of a large cave near the cemetery. For this is the mouth of the vaults of Zin, and the vindictive ghasts are always on watch there murderously for those citizens. They must beware, however, of a large cave near the cemetery, for this is the mouth of the vaults of Zin, and the vindictive ghosts are always on watch there murderously for denizens of the upper abyss who hunt and prey on them. The ghasts try to come out when the gugs sleep, and they attack ghouls as readily as gugs, so they cannot discriminate. The ghasts try to come out when the gugs sleep, and they attack ghouls as readily as gugs, for they cannot discriminate. As soon as one passes, another comes. The guests try to come out when the gugs sleep, and they can't, and they attack ghouls as readily as gugs, for they cannot discriminate. They are very primitive, and eat one another. They are very primitive, and eat one another. The gugs. The gugs have a sentry at a narrow in the vaults of Zen. The gugs have a sentry at a narrow in the vaults of Zen, but he is often drowsy, and is sometimes surprised by a party of ghasts. Though ghasts cannot live in real light, they can endure. They can endure the gray twilight of the abyss for hours. Okay. Less than 10 pages in an hour and a half. It's killing me. Unfortunately, given that apparently, on this overcast day, despite all of the rainfall and everything that might dissuade others from carrying on throughout their affairs through this road, they do. So, I'm afraid that we must call it close here today. Not quite as productive as I would have liked. Yet, nonetheless, we did have some fun. There was a great sum of time in Roadwarden, which we enjoyed, and, admittedly thereafter, the work of Lovecraft is always something that uplifts, even through the most dire of situations, as I think is quite the virtue of its work, and much the same as Roadwarden. But, at the end of A Path to the Unknown, here we today close out. I thank you all for attending, those that did, and those that will be reviewing in the future. If you enjoyed the content here, that which at least I was able to summon forth, I bid that you join us in our future streams, share us around, and see what you can do about, well, checking out our social media. We have... I'm not even allowed to be dignified the outro, apparently. We are on X, Instagram, and also Spotify. We are on X, Instagram, Spotify, as well as coming to be BitChute and TikTok. If you like our content well enough that you might wish to support it, before I forget, and if you wish to join us for perhaps a little bit more directly engaged conversation, there is always the threefold at a factory on Discord. If you would feel that this is perhaps worth supporting, maybe to increase things like soundproofing, and to propel me towards making this a career that I could take professionally, there's always one-time donations that could be made by Stream Elements, as is linked in the description. Or, if you wish to be on a more subscriptive basis, there is always Patreon. There's always Patreon. The $5 proponent tier which of course gets you back something for your donation to us, enables you to have your name here at the end of every single stream in the credits, as well as voting in polls, which I might host if I have any details I would like to query my watchers and supporters for. In addition to ad-free streaming of all of our content at your own leisure and the ability to download it for no charge per piece. There are also the $10 and $20 There are also the $10 and $20 Exponent and Ultraponent tiers, each with their own set of benefits that include the previous to them. And last but not least, I curse these bloody cars that are coming by. I hope to see you all in the next entry to our series. Until then, never miss your opportunity.